do you think that because of the radical nature of the claim being made here, not just involving the miracles of Jesus' ministry and the resurrection, but also the moral importance of this story and the fact that it's supposed to be essentially the central event of human history, that although we may have a higher standard of historical evidence compared to other average historical facts, we should expect a much higher standard of evidence, perhaps even higher than what we have available to us as it stands?
Yeah, I don't agree with that attitude at all, Alex. And I got myself into some controversy by saying this.
That's because of me. And given some extra flair by Mr. Deity.
Low bar indeed, Bill. Hey, there's your new nickname. Low Bar Bill. Ooh, I like it.
It would be wrong to demand higher standards of evidence for this. If anything, it would seem to me that one would be more ready to believe if there's any sort of shred of evidence that would be supportive of it because of the tremendous practical benefits.
This man has not learned his lesson. Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians.
Joined today by a former Mormon, or Foreman, as I refer to myself.
Welcome Brian from Mr. Deity, one of YouTube's very first atheist-themed channels. His first video is old enough to vote, but his current videos are unquestionably the hardest-hitting combination of brilliance and humor that social media has to offer.
Well, that's very sweet. I appreciate that, especially coming from you, because I'm a huge fan. I don't think anyone else in this space has done more than you to make Christian excuses just completely lose their minds, especially when it comes to your resurrection videos. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, we're finally here together to watch the latest piece of evidence that someone in the apologetics hierarchy...
Did you mean excusegetics hierarchy?
Excusegetics hierarchy should have already taken away William Lane Craig's privilege to speak on their behalf after this debacle in 2023.
I thought to myself, and I'm not kidding, I thought, if there is just one chance in a million that this is true, it's worth believing.
Holy cow. Yet here he is, having semi-regular visits with Alex O'Connor.
What do you think is a more powerful approach to bringing people to the faith of Christianity? Is it things like trying to prove the historicity of the resurrection?
How exactly would you do that, Paul? You're a resurrection guy. You've spent ridiculous amounts of time examining the arguments for the resurrection. You're writing a book about the resurrection, right?
Don't rush me. It took Gary Habermas 14 years to do this.
No rush, but is there any way people like Christian excusegist ordinaire William Lane Craig, a.k.a. Low Bar Bill, could prove the resurrection to you? What would that take?
Whatever it would not be testimony. Even if you believe miracles happen all the time, it's more likely that any given story about a miracle is actually a lie or a sincere mistake. Most people rightfully reject most miracle claims. Some people just really like a few of them.
I think the important thing to realize when it comes to the resurrection is that God clearly doesn't want anyone proving the resurrection. That would be the worst day of God's life, because proving the resurrection would be so easy for God, right? God would simply take a meeting with Jesus and say, look, I know things didn't go well for you down there last time. People weren't very nice to you. They were mean. They hung up on you, or rather hung you up. But I need you to go down again. But this time I'm going to give you the invincibility cloak, not the invisibility cloak. We've been doing that for way too long. I'll give you all the infinity stones and the gauntlet and everything you need. I just need you to show up so that people believe that you really did rise from the dead, because there's a lot riding on people believing this stuff. Then Jesus would show up, demonstrate his power, his invincibility. He could do a walking on water show 3 nights a week out in front of the Paulogia, and so many more people would be saved. But that's clearly not what God wants. For the last 2,000 years, God has had some weird fetish for people believing things on insufficient evidence. I guess we need to develop the muscle of faith here and now, because we're never going to need faith for the rest of eternity. We'll be face to immaterial face in the next life. We'll know as we're known. So where are you going to develop that faith muscle, right? You got to do it here and now. That's God's kink. That and burning animal flesh.
or more trying to demonstrate what it is that the resurrection is supposed to represent for people emotionally.
Yeah.
For the guards at the tomb, I suspect the main thought would have been, oh, great, my bosses are going to literally kill us and make our children orphans. Hey, thanks, Jesus.
It's okay, though, because, as was the custom, Roman guards delivered all bad news to the Jewish chief priests first, just in case they wanted to bribe them to lie about it. Romans would normally summarily execute a soldier who fell asleep on duty, but they're totally chill about it if some religious people smooth it over.
Well, I'm sure that if you're talking about evangelistic effectiveness, it would be the latter.
So clearly we need more ladders, right? I have two. I have a step ladder and then a full-size ladder. Never knew they were some kind of stairway to heaven, though. But hey, that's awesome. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, Paul? Ooh, really makes me wonder. But I always know that the piper will lead us to reason. Have we just completely dated ourselves?
I'm sorry, I literally have no idea what you're talking about.
Wait, you don't know Stairway to Heaven, the song?
I don't know what kind of cult you were raised in, but we didn't listen to the devil music in our Mennonite household.
Because I do think that people tend to make decisions primarily on the basis of emotions rather than on the basis of reason.
Which is why religions, especially Christianity, have always been so devoted to teaching their people critical thinking skills. You know, how to think for yourself, how to recognize faulty thinking and fallacious reasoning, how to see our biases and put them aside instead of just surrendering to them. A healthy disrespect for authority.
Bri, hold on a second. I just realized I was sitting here with my side of my hand resting on the sarcasm button.
Well, that explains it. I was wondering what was happening to me.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Obviously, that's not what Christianity has been teaching people. Making decisions based on emotion rather than reason is religion's superpower. Hey, Paul, how does the thought of being tortured forever and ever make you feel? Do you want to make a decision about, I don't know, all eternity? What if I add some really emotional music in the background?
This is why the most effective and memorable marketing campaigns in history appeal to emotions rather than boring product specs. From the good vibes of I'd like to buy the world a Coke, to Nike's motivational Just Do It campaign, to Hallmark's guilt-ridden When You Care Enough to Send the Very Best, to every single truck brand in the world clamoring to make you feel so macho that no country song could contain you, to McDonald's Taste Over Substance, I'm Loving It, to Apple's 1984 ad and Think Differently campaign, painting its users as creatives and revolutionaries.
Of course, although that last one happens to be true.
Of course.
But having said that, I think that many university-educated people are closed to the message of the gospel because they think that it is intellectually uncredible and therefore not something that can be believed by an intelligent person.
Again, the problem with this new era William Lane Craig isn't that he's lying, it's that he's out there telling the truth. Many university-educated people do think it is intellectually uncredible and cannot be believed by an intelligent person.
As you know, I call that incredible. But this is a rare moment for me. Usually Bill and I are like two rams, tucking our chins into our chest and just butting heads. But he's really making a lot of sense here. I couldn't agree more. That's why getting people educated in universities or wherever is so important. So they do learn to make decisions based not on emotion, but rather their critical faculties. Kudos, Bill.
I don't think he was finished.
And so for that reason, I have tried to present the message of the gospel in the context of giving an intellectual defense of the faith.
He can try all he likes. He'll just never succeed. Bill thinks getting degrees in theology and philosophy using big words and pronouncing genre with a French accent will somehow turn absolute nonsense into some kind of intellectual capital. And that's just not the way things work, which is why Bill has to lower the epistemic bar. No one who has the intellectual goods publicly admits that they do that kind of thing. Come on. Can you imagine an atheist saying something like that? Of course not. We don't have to. Bill is that guy who loves standards so much he has two sets, one for him and his folks and another for you and me.
I doubt that very many people will become Christians because of the arguments.
I also doubt very many people will become Christians because of the arguments.
But I think that what the arguments can do is give a person the permission to believe when his heart is moved by the message of the gospel.
One doesn't need permission to believe things for which the evidence is sufficiently strong. Facts don't care about feelings, as the saying goes.
Yeah, that technique works with every religion, which should tell you how intellectually vapid it is. I did that exact thing as a Mormon. You prime people with a beautiful message of love and security. Tell them that there's a God who has a plan for their lives, that he's looking out for them, that their lives have great meaning and purpose, that they'll get some very exciting new magic underwear soon, and they're already so filled with so much want. They desperately want this message to be true that they'll basically, accept anything you tell them after that point, right up to the point where you tell them that they'll have to hand over 10% of their gross annual income, which is gross, by the way. That's generally where we lost people.
Is your approach here something like, listen to these arguments, they should convince you or compel you at least to move slightly more towards Christianity? Or is it more a sense of, well, let me paint this as an intellectually credible position for you, but actually bringing you to Christianity is going to require something else entirely?
Yes, it's the latter.
Again with the ladder. He's really obsessed with ladders. I'll bet his is resting right next to a sign on the wall.
You're incredibly old.
I really am.
And so if you look at those arguments, Alex, that I present, they begin with great generality. God is the best explanation why anything at all exists, rather than nothing.
Indeed. If God exists, then there never was nothing, was there? The counter question would have to be, why does God exist rather than nothing? And then it's just dueling brute facts. God is no better a brute fact than some type of proto-energy state.
I think it was philosophy professor Robert Nozick from Harvard who said that the question of why there's something rather than nothing is a poorly weighted question. That's how he phrased it. First, we have no evidence that nothing is even possible. Then there are an infinite number of ways something can exist, but only one way nothing can exist.
And then it becomes a little bit more specific. God is the best explanation of the origin of the universe. And then still more specific, God is the best explanation of the fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life.
At least we know energy exists, or unintelligent life. Every fine tuna needs a fine tuner.
And then the moral argument that God is the best explanation for objective moral duties and values in the world.
Is he still working on demonstrating the existence of objective moral duties and values, or did he give up on that and just decide that mere assertion works equally well?
Which raises then, of course, the question of our moral culpability before God. And then I end, typically, with the claim that God can be personally known and experienced. And often I will, if I have time, share here a word of personal testimony from my own experience of coming to Christ.
Incredible. He's just laid out the Craig method for all to see. Wow. So you start with a bunch of bad arguments, always going from the general to the specific. Then you make a personal, emotional appeal using your own anecdotal experience where you've confessed to lowering the epistemic bar to fit the square peg into the round hole, and voila. And we shouldn't forget just how powerful the Craig method is, because it works even on ideas and beliefs where the odds are just totally stacked against you, like one chance in a million. That is some intellectually powerful stuff.
Sorry, I guess I had my hand resting on the sarcasm button again.
No, that was all me.
And so it moves from the intellectual to that more personal dimension and attempts to end with a definite personal appeal to people to explore a commitment to Christ and to know him in a personal way. So it's not just an intellectual exercise.
That makes so much sense when you think about it, but even more if you don't. By the way, when Bill talks about a personal appeal to people, is he talking about scaring the hell out of them and or into them? When I was 17, I went to one of those Christian crusade things with a friend. I think it was at Angel Stadium, and it was one of the most manipulative, fear-based things I've ever witnessed in my entire life. They didn't present a single intellectual argument. The hot dog I had, though, was really good. Really good. I love how Bill has these advanced degrees in theology and philosophy, but at the end of the day, he knows he has to leave all that behind and become No Bar Bill, making videos for his channel that are nothing more than fear-based hit pieces. He has one on his channel called The Absurdity of Life Without God, which is all about how meaningless and purposeless life is for people like you and me, Paul. It's just a bunch of Bill's nonsense backed by sometimes slightly relevant stock footage, all very dark, accompanied by dark music, that kind of thing. I think both of us have actually talked about that video on our channels, right?
We have, yes. Today, Dr. William Lane Craig presses with life's big questions.
Who am I?
Who am I?
Who am I?
Who am I? Who am I?
Who am I?
Who am I?
Why am I here?
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 And why am I here?
Where am I going?
Where am I going? Where am I going? Where I'm going?
Where am I going?
Where am I gonna go?
As an atheistic mantra. Well, let's get on with it.
Well, let's get on with it.
Well, I decided to make my own version of Bill's video from an atheist perspective. It's called The Absurdity of Life with Jesus. Maybe you could link to it in the description?
We can do one better than that. We can play it right now.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Well, I kind of wanted them to watch it on my channel, for the algorithm and such.
Oh, okay. Well, tap on the thumbnail on screen now, and you'll see The Absurdity of Life with Jesus on the Mr. Deity channel, and subscribe while you're there. Better?
Better. Love it. Beautiful.
Later.